it's Jessii Vee, and as you can tell by the title of today's video, we're gonna be talking about Jack in the Boxes. And now I'm not discussing the restaurant, I'm actually discussing the old vintage toy that we all know. I don't know about you guys, but this toy was never really fun for me. The fact that it's literally a jump scare for kids is terrible, but throughout the years, for some reason, they've been a very popular item. And its history is actually pretty creepy. So today we're going back in time to talk about how that all started, because trust me, you don't expect it. And then we're gonna be talking about a few creepy experiences that people have had in real life with their Jack-in-the-Boxes. But before I get started, I just wanted to remind you one last time that this month is almost up, which means that I'm going to be announcing the winner of the backdrop behind me, probably announcing that in a few days. So if you would like to win this background, all you have to do is be subscribed to my channel, so my Jessii Vee channel right here, have your notification bell on, and then head over to my Instagram page, follow me there, and DM me any color of a heart emoji that you would like. That's all you have to do, and I'll be announcing the winner very, very, very soon. Alright guys, so let's get into the history of Jack-in-the-Boxes. Now, there are a couple different theories about the origins of this toy, so let's start with the first theory. The Jack-in-the-Box was popularized in the 15th and 16th century, and it was based on a very popular puppet named Punch from a famous puppet show called Punch and Judy. This puppet show was extremely popular and was played in public squares throughout England in the Middle Ages. So people say that the early Jack-in-the-Box face looks very similar to this Punch puppet. As you can imagine, back in the 15th and 16th century, people didn't really have a lot of entertainment. There was no TVs, there was no internet, there was nothing to really do aside from reading, writing, walking around. And for the younger kids, watching puppet shows was actually a really big thing. Even some adults watched puppet shows because they were very funny and just overall entertaining for them. So just like we have like the most popular shows on like Netflix and stuff nowadays, back then they had the most popular puppet show, which was Punch and Judy. So people really think that the Jack-in-the-Box started because of that puppet. And it's also interesting to note that the very first Jack-in-the-Boxes were actually made out of wood and not metal or tin. Now let's move on to theory number 2 of the Jack-in-the-Box origins. Another theory from the 16th century is that the name Jack was a reference to a dark spirit. People believe that you can actually capture dark spirits in objects like boxes. So the wooden box had a handle on the side that when cranked would play music until a jack or an evil spirit on a spring was suddenly released. So with this second theory, instead of, this toy being fun and uplifting and like a great thing for kids, people actually used it to capture spirits, and they thought that the Jack-in-the-Box represented like a spirit coming out of the box, which is definitely a darker theory, and I wouldn't have expected that at all. But back then, people were extremely superstitious. Word spread about this creepy legend with the Jack-in-the-Box, which created a high demand for the toy, which is very strange. Once people found out there was like a paranormal element, they wanted it even more. And soon after, the tune Pop Goes the Weasel became the melody for this toy. And come on, you guys know that tune, right? Everyone knows that eerie tune that comes from a Jack-in-the-Box. But even the song is just so eerie, and it almost puts you in suspense. It like rises and rises until it pops. In the 1930s, the Jack-in-the-Box began to be made out of tin, and the exterior of the boxes were stamped with images from nursery rhymes. And the Jack was sometimes changed to one of those characters featured in the rhymes. So for years and years, it had literally been the same Jack in a box. But in the 1900s, they decided that they could change the character to really anything they wanted. And then, as you guys know, in 1951, the first Jack-in-the-Box hamburger stand was opened. And we're not gonna get into that because I actually did a whole other video on just Jack-in-the-Box itself, like the restaurant. And nowadays, Jack-in-the-Boxes are linked with much creepier things like horror movies. Clowns and jesters used to be a source of entertainment back in the 15th and 16th century, but now they're actually a symbol of fear for many people. So let's move on with with this video and just talk about creepy Jack-in-the-Box situations around the world. The first one is the world's largest Jack-in-the-Box. In Middletown, Connecticut sits the largest Jack-in-the-Box in the world. It's a 50-foot high contraption that has a giant clown head pop out of it once a minute. And guys, this clown head is 600 pounds. Are you kidding me? Not long after it was created, it became an eye-catching roadside attraction that began drawing curious visitors from all over the world. But as I was researching this giant Jack-in-the-Box, I found out that it was permanently closed for some mysterious reason. So if any of you guys are from here and know what actually happened, please comment that down below because I'm curious why they would close down such a giant attraction. But if you go on Google, it literally says permanently closed. Alright, next let's talk about a paranormal Jack-in-the-Box game. Because guys, basically if something exists, there's a paranormal game for it. So of course I looked up paranormal Jack-in-the-Box games and I found one that says after it gets dark outside, you put the Jack-in-the-Box in the farthest room in your house and wind it up. And you have to try and exit your house before the Jack-in-the-Box pops up, or the evil spirit will remain in your house until you do it correctly. So you literally have to wind it up and run for your life out of the house before it springs up, which is so creepy. I mean, you don't want that Jack spirit stuck in your house forever, no thank you. But thankfully it does give you a few tries to do it correctly. So I of course decided to buy a vintage Jack-in-the-Box on Amazon so I can actually play this game. So it should be arriving in the mail tomorrow, so that'll be up on my vlog channel. Alright, so let's move on to a true creepy story called The Baby's Room. This is about an 18-year-old mother who just had a baby. And every night, just like most babies, it would cry and scream and keep her up most of the time. But she discovered that when she let her baby play with the Jack-in-the-Box, it would make her smile and giggle and would stop her from crying. So this mother continued to do that every single night her baby was crying. She would take out this Jack-in-the-Box and everything would be cool. But about a week later, she noticed that whenever her baby would cry, the Jack-in-the-Box would crank itself up on its own and would play with the child without the mother even having to do that. So the mother would be like in bed listening to this toy constantly going off. This went on for several nights until finally the mother could not handle it anymore. She was too afraid. So they actually moved out of the house because she assumed there was something in her house that was doing that. I mean, at least it seemed like maybe a positive spirit because it was trying to help out the baby, but that's still probably a situation that you don't really want to be in. And lastly, I wanted to talk about a haunted Jack-in-the-Box that was listed on eBay. There was this listing where this woman was basically begging somebody to buy her old Jack-in-the-Box. She said she got it as a little girl back in the 50s, so this Jack-in-the-Box is pretty vintage. She got it from a clown at a festival. She said she was out with her parents and saw a clown that looked very sad sitting on a chair all by himself looking down at the ground. And all the other clowns were up dancing and playing and being silly, but this clown was like off on its own. So she decided to walk over to him to cheer him up, so she gave him a hug and the clown immediately started smiling. And to thank her, he reached into his bag and pulled out an old Jack-in-the-Box toy. He told her it was very special to him and she could never lose it. So throughout her life as she got older, she almost felt obligated to keep it, even though maybe she didn't really want to, but she made sure to play with it throughout her childhood, even throughout her teens. But then, you know, once she's an adult and she's older, she kind of started to forget about the toy a little bit. She still kept it, but she kept it away in storage. But the older she got and the longer she ignored it, the more it would randomly pop open without warning. And in her old age, jump scares weren't really a good thing for her, so she decided to put it in storage in her garage, hoping it would not bother her anymore. But in the middle of the night, it would relentlessly play the Jack-in-the-Box tune so loud that she could hear it from her bedroom. It was almost like the Jack-in-the-Box was begging her to play with it again. So at this point, she just wanted it gone and listed it on eBay. Now I can't find the listing anymore, so either someone bought it or she gave up and took it down. But I thought that story was pretty eerie. Anyway, so guys, those are all of the creepy Jack-in-the-Box stories I'm going to be talking about today. If you have any other nostalgic items you want me to cover remember, definitely comment it down below. But I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video.